Hi, my name is Joel and I'm the founder of Awake Origins. In this episode of Unplugged, I sit down with Boris Veldhuijzen van Zanten, the founder and CEO of The Next Web, an international tech and media company best known for their impressive Next Web conference. While Boris and I spent some time relaxing, we reflected on his journey as both a human being and entrepreneur. We spoke about a wide array of topics, including how to shape your own life, his past as a circus performer, and why he does what he does. I'd like to talk with you about the journey you went through as an entrepreneur and a human being, because in the end I think there's not a real difference between those two.
Yeah.
If you would look at your life as in a life with different chapters in it, what would be those chapters for you and what would be the main chapter headings? Maybe if 3 chapters could be 8, whatever you feel is right for you.
I'll think out loud and try to answer your question. So I think the first chapter was like my childhood, where I felt like everybody else was in charge. I was like frequently I felt like the one left out of the conversation. Like I didn't really understand what people were like doing. And then when I was, I think 14 or 15, I decided to leave school, drop out of school.
How did this happen?
Well, I was dyslexic and I had bad eyesight, but both, like they discovered both of these things like really late in life, like when I was 12 or something. So before that, they just thought I was stupid and not ambitious, or like I didn't care. But I was just sitting in the back of the classroom, just staring out the window and thinking like I don't understand what anybody is talking about. So I went to a lot of different schools. And at one point, the teacher said to my parents, like he might be retarded or something, because he's just not picking up all the basic stuff. But I was just sort of dreaming and in my own world. So by the time I got fed up with all of this, I discovered the Circus School, and I said to my parents, I'm going to drop out of school and go to the Circus School, and then do that a few years, and then I'll go to Art Academy.
What is the Circus School?
Where you learn how to juggle and drive a unicycle and maybe go into the circus. I never really planned to go in the circus, but I thought this is an interesting skill to pick up. I could already juggle a little bit. I had a unicycle and I thought, maybe if I go to art school, it's something I can use, like in performance art or something. So I think the second segment part is sort of educating myself and picking up all these skills and being sort of an independent person. Yeah. So I remember when I left school, the teacher said, if you drop out of school now, you're placing yourself out of society. Nobody's ever going to help you. You will never be able to get a job. Everything you want to accomplish, you'll have to fight for. And he said it to scare me back into school. But to me, it felt completely liberating because I just realized, oh my God, so from now on, like the only way is up, and everything I do, I'll have to do myself, but then I can also take credit for it myself. So to me, it felt like, I feel like I became an entrepreneur like in like that moment, right? Yeah, that was just sort of my awakening, where suddenly I realized like I can now shape my own life instead of doing what other people tell me.
That's then something that happened at a really young age. You really felt that you were in control.
Totally, yeah. And I have children myself, and I try to tell them like when this happened, that was life-changing for me. So go find that for yourself, right? Find like ways to shape your own life. Realize that you are in charge, even though you still have to listen to teachers and everything. But it's your life. I think there was a similar moment when I first started in art school. Like the very first day. So
is this the second chapter then?
No, this was more part of, so the second chapter is sort of learning and growing as a human being and sort of preparing for the next chapter. And the thing that made the difference for me was the director of art school. On the first day he said, the reputation of an art academy is not set by the teachers but by the students. So you decide by being involved whether this is going to be a good academy or a bad. So basically, this is your school. I work for you. The teachers work for you. And I just thought like, oh my God, the teachers work for me and I can do anything I want. So I think they all hated me. Well, they hate me, but I was not an easy student because I just thought I'm gonna take full advantage of everything they have to offer me.
So you were demanding.
I was very demanding, yeah, but like in a positive way. But I did find my own way. So, and I was already sort of there because I just thought like, this is my life. I'm gonna shape it the way I think works.
And why art school?
Why
art?
I think I was interested in it from a child, from when I was a child. I was always making things. I think I have a very creative mind, so it always seemed logical to me. But when I wanted to drop out of school, I knew that you had to be 18 to apply for Art Academy. I was 14 or 15. So Circus School was something where I thought like, oh, that's an easy sort of alternative route to getting there. So then I graduated art school, and I think then the third part started where I started my first company. And I think, so then I became a practicing entrepreneur, you could say.
How old were you back then?
I think 26 or 27, something like that, yeah. And then when I was 29, I sold my first company. And then...
So why did you start your first company?
So I had just graduated from art school, and I had discovered the internet. That was just, so this was 1995. And so I was working with the World Wide Web, and I thought this is just incredibly interesting. And I also felt like this is now a world-changing event, and I'm there at the start. Actually, I thought it was already late, but still felt like, all right, there's still enough opportunity. And I thought I can play a role in it. Like, I think I have added benefit, I have something to contribute, but I wasn't sure what. And at first I thought, well, I'm an artist, so probably it will be art. But then pretty soon I realized, like, it's not that it's boring, but like art is also often commenting on things, right? And I thought commenting also almost feels passive, right? Commenting is something you do from the sidelines. And I thought my involvement could be more intensive, right? I think if we just leave it to the geeks and the nerds to build the World Wide Web, it's going to be boring and ugly. So maybe I should get more involved. So that was a very, sort of a feeling and instinct I had where I'm like, there's more in this than just making art. And then I found out that there's an island somewhere called Tonga, and they have the domain extension TO, just like the Netherlands has NL and France has FR. But two is, of course, also a word. So I thought if I register welcome.to and serve to and travel to and listen to, you can turn that into a sentence. So listen to /Boris or welcome to the Malediven. And so I set up a redirect service that people could get a free address like that, listen to Boris, and then I would redirect it to their long homepage, which at the time was the thing to do. You would build a homepage. And that became a very successful company that I sold later. And I realized, like, as a company or as an entrepreneur, you're always looking for your competitive edge, right? So what's the thing that sets you apart from the rest that gives you sort of a head start? And I realized it's like the ambition and persistence that you learn at the Circus School, and my creative look at things combined. That's my competitive edge, and that's how I get a head start on the internet.
And you sold it after a few years, the first company?
I think after 2.5 years, yeah.
So that was the third chapter, your first part of the entrepreneurship.
So I sort of combine them. I feel like the first and the second company, I also sold the second company. Like that to me feels like one chapter where I just tried a lot of different things, and some were successful, some weren't. And I think then the chapter after that is sort of starts with D&W, my current company. So because that was a much more like a slow growth, you have slow cooking and slow growth company where we really focused on how can we build a company that will outlast us instead of building something where we're like, ooh, this might be something we could sell really quick.
So what was at the beginning, what happened there? Why did you want to create this?
I think me and my partner, but I realized that the position I had, the people I knew, our view on technology, our sense of humor was something that we could use to build a sort of digital media company. And it started with a conference, and then pretty soon we added the blog, the media part, and things sort of grew from there. So it was sort of like standing in the kitchen and seeing a bunch of ingredients and then thinking like, wait a minute, if we combine all of this, like our talents and our experience and network, then we could build something that it will be interesting for us for the long term. We had a conversation in the beginning where we said to each other, like, how can we build a company that will be interesting for us to still work at in 20 years, right? So what would that company need?
Yeah.
And I think that was an interesting discussion and gave us a more like long-term view versus just like how can we ramp up revenue as fast as possible because then we can get a multiple and sell.
So what was discussed in that meeting? What were the ingredients of that kind of company?
Yeah, from what I remember is that we said it has to be like diverse in every way, so like a diverse group of people to work with, but also like a diverse business model, like a diversified business model where you do a lot of different things, because if it's just one thing, you get bored with that. We wanted it to be scalable, so if you build a business that just sort of stays the same over the years, then you're also going to get bored at one point. And we wanted it to be international, right? So we thought if we just focus on the Netherlands, then at one point you're going to grow bored with the Netherlands and you'll want to expand your scope. And so these three things, of course, by making it international, we could also just travel and call it business. Yeah.
So what do you think is the essence of what the Next Web is bringing to the world? And what does it say about you? What is the meaning for you in there?
Yeah, so our tagline is the heart of tech. And I think the difference is that you can read about digital technology in a lot of places. But I don't think it's about the ones and the zeros and the bits and the bytes and the software and the hardware. It's really about the impact on society and on humanity and on you personally, right? So to give you an example, there are 3,000 new apps in the App Store every day. That's all news, right? Because they're all new. So you could say, oh, so you have to write about that. But I don't really care, you don't really care, right? What you care about is that I have an app and it's like a 3-year-old app, but I discovered it a year ago and it's like a health app and it saved my life. Like I can tell you the story and then you're like, oh my God, that actually saved your life? And then you're intrigued, right? Because then it's a personal story and then you realize, oh, how is that gonna affect me? It's might even be emotional. So I think that's the biggest difference between us and our competitors, that we're always focused on the human angle and we understand that it's never businesses doing businesses with other businesses. It's people working at companies doing business with other people working at other companies, right? So I think this focus on the humans, that's what sets us apart.
When you look back at your path as an entrepreneur, what changed within you in those years as a human being and as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I think there are small things and big things, right? So I think I've been lucky to have been able to build companies that grew and changed over time, and that I was able to grow and change over time. And I think like the exciting part about having a company and having it grow is that every now and then you realize that the company now needs a different skill set from you than the one that got you to this point. And so I feel like every 2 years or something, my job completely changes. And I'm always nervous about the next phase. And whether I'll have what it takes to be able to perform. And if there's going to be a moment where I realize, like, this is not something I can do, right? This is just, I took it this far, but what is now needed for me, what the company now needs, is not something I can deliver. So that's going to be a very interesting moment in my life, of course, if the day I look into the mirror and think, I'm not, not equipped for this, it's going to be a tough week.
So what is the major thing that you had to leave behind to do your current role?
Well, I think, so when you just start a company, I think up until maybe 15 or 20 people in your company, you're all doing everything, right? So I was really, I was really good at doing a lot of things pretty well, right? So I'm not a good developer, but I did, write the PHP code that run the site for years. Probably the first 8 or 10 years or something. Like the code, I had access to the service, I was managing the code. I was doing the design as well. We did, of course, like in the morning you would do a sales meeting, but then you would do something on the server, and then after that you would clean the kitchen because otherwise nobody else does it. And so you're sort of doing everything. And I remember very well, like the moment where I realized, like, oh, I haven't opened Photoshop or Illustrator like in a year, actually, since I've had this laptop. I haven't even installed it. And it's sort of a moment where you realize, like, right, so that is a skill that is no longer needed for me, right? And that, like, it's not frustrating or painful, but there's a moment there where you realize, like, oh my God, I invested so much in those skills and I used it so a lot and I enjoyed it, and now I don't do it anymore, which is kind of like sad. But then right before you get sad, you realize, yeah, but now there were people here who are so much better at doing that than I could ever be, than I've ever been, that it's actually great that I don't do that and that they're doing it. So. And
you evolved to something else, of course.
Yeah. So Photoshop is no longer my tool. But I also remember a moment where I came home and I felt kind of frustrated, and then I was talking to my girlfriend about that, and then she said, so, well, what did you do? And I said, yeah, I just had meetings, right? It's just the whole day was just meetings. It's just frustrating. And then later I started realizing, oh, wait a minute, my new tool is the meeting. The meeting is my product, right? So I have to think about, how do I make this product the best product there is? So, and slowly I started growing into, so I'm designing the meeting, right? So I gotta come prepared. I gotta make sure everybody knows the role. I gotta make sure that at the ending, like, everybody knows what to do. And then it no longer feels frustrating if the meeting is over and everybody walks away knowing what to do, and I have nothing to do except the next meeting, right? But that takes some time, and at one point you realize, like, right, I'm now in this phase.
Yeah.
That's the previous phase. I'm now in a new phase. Yeah.
What will be the next phase?
Well, I wish I knew, because I would get prepared for it. But I think I'm sort of transitioning to the new phase, and the new phase is, I'm in less meetings now, right? So I hired a COO, I have more managers, and there are less meetings. So even yesterday I had a meeting, and then 2 people were planning a different meeting, and I said, can you invite me to the meeting as well? And then one of them looked at me and they said, why do you want to be in the meeting? And then I said, well, because it's important and I want to know, like, how it progresses. And then he said, wouldn't it be more efficient if after the meeting I woke up to you and just explain you in 5 minutes what the result is? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And he's like, all right. And then I realized, like, right, so it's no longer the meeting, right? I'm now going to the next phase. So
So what is it now if it's not no longer a meeting? It's lying down in your hammock and just getting the creativity in?
Yeah, not really either. But so I have a new big shareholder, so that's something I have to manage, and that's not as much about the meeting, but about the stuff around the meeting. I have more long-term goals that I have to focus on and make sure that we reach our targets, that we're on schedule with everything. So that's one part. Then I have the COO, and sort of traditionally what happens is that the COO is more internally focused and the CEO is more externally focused. So the big clients, speaking at events, thinking about marketing, that is sort of, so more, in a way you could say more thinking about the company than working on the company.
Yeah.
That's I think it's hard for me to explain because I'm sort of in the process of finding out.
So you're in the transition period just now.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
What gives you the biggest joy in what you're doing?
So I think there's like in humans, there's a state of flow, right? Where you're sort of very focused and efficient and things go well and it seems to be without, like you're not distracted because you're just very focused. I think like a company can also achieve a state of flow where you feel like there's a certain rhythm in the things that are happening. People are focused, like everybody knows what they need to do. Problems might arise, they always arise, but then you're prepared for that. And I think I get a lot of joy from that. Like if you look at the company, you feel like, all right, there are problems, there are issues, but I have the right people in the right place and they know what to do. And then you sort of lean back a little and go like, yes, this is going well. So I think that gives me joy, yeah, if I see that.
So what is your experience? How do you get your organization in that state of flow? What is needed for this?
So I think it's difficult for me to say what would work for other companies, right? Because like every company, it's like an organism with so many factors deciding what happens. But I think in my company, what worked for us is that I think early on we realized if we hire great people and give them guidance but freedom, so they take their own responsibility, then unexpected good things will happen, and sometimes unexpected bad things. But overall, like we put a lot of trust in the people that work for us, and that worked for us. So yeah, I think that's our formula. And like looking back, I even wish we would have started on that earlier. Like especially in the beginning, when you run a company, you feel like, right, I run the company, so I have to decide what we're going to do and tell people what to do. And then at one point you understand, like, wait a minute, we hire people smarter than us to do this thing that they know more about than we could ever know. So why would I tell this person? We had an issue a few months ago where a partner that we worked with, they were quite demanding, and then they said to like the manager overseeing the project, can we have a call and have Boris there? And then that manager said, well, when it comes to this particular topic, Boris answers to me. So we could have him there, but
doesn't make a difference.
No, it doesn't make a difference. And I heard about that, and that made me really proud, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
oh, that's cool.
That's great, because everybody always talks about empowering your people, but then I'm like, wow, when you actually believe that and know it's true, and you can tell somebody else without asking me, like Boris answers to me, I'm like, well, then we have achieved something, I think.
Nice. Of course, you have a really close eye on what's happening in the tech world, what kind of developments are coming to the market. And what changed throughout the years? When you go back 10 years and when you look at now and the future, what kind of developments do you see?
Well, I think there's a constant sort of ebb and flow of positive a positive wave and a sort of more negative wave. And the tech world is always like, oh, we're over-promising, everything is going to be amazing, and then it sort of either crashes or it just goes down a little bit, and people get more realistic, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't all good. And I think that's a very healthy rhythm. I think when something is new, like you're blinded by the promises and the opportunities, and then you sort of get thrown back in your seat a little bit, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, so not everything is fine, but then you overcome that, and you're like, oh, actually, there's more opportunities, and then so you're sort of thrown back and forth between positive and negative. And I think right now we're coming from over positive and we're going to realistic, slightly more negative, which is, I think, a healthy thing to go through. So I think that's where we're at this moment. You can sort of feel in the market where people are pausing and going like, wait a minute, yeah, and so it's the beginning of another dip. Yeah.
So what do you expect when you look at the future? Because I understand the highs and lows of technology, but all in all, of course, there's a trend that's going up.
Yeah.
And things can go pretty fast in the next decades.
Yeah.
Are you positive or negative about our outlook as a species and what we do with technology?
As a species. So, well, that's a tougher, broader question.
I know.
But, all right, so if you're positive about like the survival of our species, I think the reason why you're positive is because you think that technology is going to help us get there. Like I don't believe technology would ruin us, but like I'm not afraid that robots will take over. I'm not afraid that AI will turn bad. That's of course I'm worried about the environment and about politics and a lot of things. But overall, I think technology is a force for good, and not like ultimately always good. Like there's always abuse, there are always mistakes, accidents, but overall I think it's pushing us in the right direction.
And why do you think so?
Well, so if you take like the worst examples, right? So Facebook at this moment, you could say Russia used Facebook and social media to influence the politics, and there's now a madman president in the US. So you can say, oh, right, so Facebook is bad, and there's more criticism about Facebook that you would be right about. But then if I look at Facebook as a whole, like the amount of contact people have with each other, like how many people have met each other through social media, and I still think sort of the net result is positive, right? I'd rather have a world with Facebook in it and some incidents than a world without Facebook in it. I think overall it's better for the world. And it's not perfect, right? And I see it as my responsibility and my role to keep showing people what's good and bad about technology as it sort of progresses. So, but overall, I think it's positive.
So if imagine you're still running the next web in 10 to 15 years from now.
Yeah.
What kind of impact do you hope it has made by then on the developments?
Yeah, so I think the proudest moments are when I meet like entrepreneurs or startups that say like you made a positive impact on me personally or us as a business. And there are many stories, like the people who work at a company and then read a story or see an interview and then say that inspired me to become an entrepreneur. Or the companies that say we came to your conference and that's where we met our investor, or the company we sold to, or that's where we hired a CEO. So all these stories, I just hope to see more of them. I think we are inspiring people, but I think my frustration is that like you never know how many people know your company, but we're guessing it's like maybe 20 million. So based on the number of visitors and everything. But we also estimate that there are like 500 million people who should know us, right? So basically nobody knows us, right? That's just so. I think that's my challenge is like, how can we reach more people? And then if they decide like, all right, this is not for me, well, fine. But then at least you have a choice to ignore us. But if I see the positive impact we have on our industry and the people that we interact with, I'm like, I'd love to do that for more people.
Yeah. So are you happy with how things played out so far?
Yeah, I'm very happy. So the FT acquired a majority of our company, and of course that's nice as an entrepreneur. But like the moment I announced it to everybody who worked for us, I said, like normally a due diligence process, so where they check your company, takes 2 months or something. If it's very complicated, 3 months. Ours took a year, and that's just because the FT is so thorough. They wanted to know everything. So, and I said to everybody who worked for us, I said, they looked at all your work, like the past 14 years, everything, and then at the end of it, they said, this is up to our standards. This is high quality work. Yeah. So I said, there's not a bigger compliment you'll get in your life than this deal.
Being acquired.
Right?
In this case, yeah.
And it's more important than any of the other, like the money is, the money, but this, this is bigger than your high school diploma, right? This is, a stamp of approval. That's just, there's no equivalent. Yeah. So for me as an entrepreneur, like there's a quote from Ricky Gervais, the comedian, and they asked him, what would you tell your younger self, your 18-year-old self? And he said, I would tell myself, nobody else knows what they're doing either. And I always thought that was a very powerful thing to say, because like the first, like if you're young, you're always thinking like, how do these people know what they have to do? I don't know anything. And then later in life, you realize, right, nobody knows. Yeah. Everybody's just pretending and guessing and hoping for the best. And even companies, right? If you have a company, you look at your own company, you're like, oh my God, it's all a mess and chaos. And then you get to a bigger company, you're like, oh, wait a minute. It's a mess and chaos here as well, right? It's just all...
Everybody's just fooling around.
Yeah. and that's a very comforting to have that knowledge. So, but like this deal suddenly told us like our level of chaos and is actually fine, right? And it's of a high standard, high standard. So suddenly all the things that I doubted in the past, I feel better about, right? Because I'm like, well, it led to this, and this is actually good enough for the FT. Yeah. So I think like me and my co-founder and even the shareholders that left in the deal, they're all very, satisfied with how things turned out.
Right. About the question, what would you tell your younger self? I want to change the question for a bit. When you look at your 60-year-old self, what would it tell you? The you of today?
Oh, I think maybe to worry less. It's a weird thing, but I think people who interact with me think that I'm a very carefree person. I look relaxed and happy, but I can only be relaxed and happy because I worry a lot, right? It's also my...
So you took care of all the shit that might go wrong, you mean?
Yeah, and it takes some effort to stay positive and keep smiling, right? So, but I have my days where at the end of the day I'm just like exhausted because it takes a lot of energy to stay positive sometimes, right? Even in the face of overwhelming problems and challenges, to keep saying to everybody, it's gonna work out fine, it's fine, but then in the back of your mind going like, oh my God, how can I? So, and I had the same for the past 14 years. And it's always easy, like once you do a deal like this, to go look back and like, oh right, it all worked out fine.
Why is it all worth it?
So again, that's a question I can only answer for me, right? And that's I think a few years in, like we still didn't pay ourselves. I think like for the first 5 years we paid ourselves like 500 euros a month, like the minimum we could, because we were just building the company, that was just it. And I did do other jobs to be able to afford to do this, and that felt like an investment. But you could also say it was just a very expensive hobby, right? That we had, and I think I sometimes it's rare, but sometimes you'll meet someone, and you can just feel that they chose this startup because they thought there was going to be a lot of money in it. So they have this concept of like, oh, I saw an opportunity to make a lot of money, so I'm going to do this, and I honestly think that me and my co-founder, we did think that this was a business that could generate money. But first and foremost, we were really interested in playing a role in this, right? And we thought, this is such a great industry to work with. This is like a life-changing event for everybody on Earth. And not only are we spectators, we also play a role. We're influential in this thing. We can play a part. Like, how exciting is that, right? I would pay to be able to do that, and I did, right? So I think like that's worth it. If you can find something like that where you're just like, oh, can I please just stay and watch, maybe help out a little bit, because I just want to be a part of this. And of course, if then there's some money at the end, then even
That's
better.
a nice add-on.
Yeah, but I think I honestly believe that we always thought like we're going to give it our best, right? We're going to work hard. And if in a few years the whole thing goes bankrupt, well, that would suck.
Yeah.
But then we've employed like hundreds of people for years who were able to, buy houses, start families, have children, learn and interact with others, and have an influence in this incredibly interesting phenomena. And then we're left with nothing. Well, at least we've had a great experience, and then I'm sure we'll be fine. We'll, even if the whole thing crashes and burns, I think we'll find a job somewhere, right? So yeah. And I think you need that. I think if you're going to start a company and you're only in it for the money, you're not going to last that long. I spent 14 years working on that. That's probably like the most functional years of my life I spent doing this. So if this would have been a shitty job, but I would have been in it just for the money, then you're really poor, right?
You're wasting your life in a way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What would be the most important advice you'd like to give to entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so my advice is always to not listen to my advice. And what I mean is that if you find something that's unique and sort of an opportunity for you, then it's probably unique and an opportunity for you because nobody else is doing it, right? So you can then ask like an old person who has experience with the previous thing. Probably that's not going to be helpful for you, right? It might be a little bit inspiring, but you really have to do it yourself. And then once you realize nobody else knows what they're doing either, you might as well just go to work and fix the thing, right? So I think I had a chat with someone recently and they said, so maybe in a few years when you're done with this, are you going to write a book? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, of course, I'd love to write a book. But then this is also so predictable or something, right? So old guys who've been successful at something, who are not going to write a book about how they became successful, that young people are going to read, hoping to find a secret, and there's none, right? All the information is outdated. It's worked for me, won't work for you. Like, even if we would start at the same time in the same industry on the same opportunity, like your personality is so different from mine. So, like, what works for me probably won't work for you. So in other words, just get started. Just do it. Don't listen to other people and go for it. Yeah.
But in a way, this is how you live your life. Even from a 14, 15-year-old boy, you started creating it in your
Yeah,
way.
that's true. Yeah. So even this advice is advice specifically for me.
But I love the advice.
Yeah. All right. Well, it might work for some people. Yeah. So maybe that's the advice then. Like, find advice that works for you. Don't listen to any other advice. There's a very influential, a very successful entrepreneur, one of the guys who started Booking, and he said, like, building a successful company is like running through, running through a forest, blindfolded, and with like 100 other entrepreneurs, and there's always one of them that makes it to the end, and then there's a journalist there saying, "How did you do it?"
Yeah.
And then they said, "Well, I went left at one point," and then I think that's good to remember. Like, there's.
So it's about finding your own way. What
Yeah.
is true for you.
Totally. Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Great.